Hate to say it, but we cannot be fooled by the final score. Moral victories do not exist in the NFL. And against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Jets showed they still have a long way to go as a team. Locked On Jets starts now.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, September 22nd, 2025, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. A big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. On today's show, we are going to break down a New York Jets defeat yesterday at the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was a last-second loss. The Bucs won 29-27. The Jets fall to 0-3 on the season. And I have to say, I slept on it, and I woke up feeling just as bad today as I did when I went to bed last night about this loss. I was very frustrated by this performance. I was frustrated by the quarterback play, and I think Tyrod Taylor showed that there will be no quarterback controversy in New York. I'm frustrated by how far this team is, how many pieces on this team need to be replaced, and I'm just frustrated by the Jets' overall level of play. We're going to talk about all those things on today's show. Now, I know that this message will not be well received by a portion of my audience because I know a lot of you want me to go out and talk about the Jets coming back from 20 down in the fourth quarter, fighting back. Well, they may have lost, but they showed hard. At least they didn't quit. I mentioned this on my recap show last night. I think that the bare minimum we should expect from professional football players is to continue to play hard. I think that if you quit on a game, that's a negative. I think continuing to fight is something we should expect. But I look at the way the Jets came back in this game. And one of the key words I've been using this year on the podcast is repeatable. And I ask myself, if the Jets play like that every single week, what will the results be? If the Jets played the way they did week one against the Pittsburgh Steelers and they play Pittsburgh 10 times, I think they probably win 5 of those games. That was a coin toss game. The offense played really well. The defense played really poorly. I left that game with optimism, particularly about the offense. Week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. If the Jets play against Buffalo and look like that 10 times, they're probably winning 0 of those games because that was just a dreadful performance. If the Jets play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 10 times and play like they did yesterday, and this might be a controversial statement, I think they're winning 0 of those games because I think if you look at everything that happened in the fourth quarter of that game, there was a lot of breaks the Jets got, from the Bucs kind of taking their foot off the gas to the Allen Lazard play that should not have been called a catch in the end zone, to the Will McDonald play, which was a phenomenal play by Will. But are we really going to count on a guy jumping over the line, blocking a field goal, scooping and scoring every week? I look at this game, and I look at the way the Jets actually played, and I ask, what part of the Jets team played well yesterday? Did the offense play well? I mean, maybe in the fourth quarter when the Bucs played a really soft zone coverage on every play, when the Bucs stopped defending the first 10 yards of the field. Checkdowns from Tyrod Taylor, which were really not helping the Jets early in the game, started turning into 10, 12-yard gains. But I think you could say that the prevent the Bucs were playing was the number one factor in the Jets moving the ball. And I say that because in those 2 touchdown drives, the Jets only had 1 play that went for 15 yards. The Bucs were pretty much defending the end zone. The Bucs were pretty much giving the Jets everything underneath that they wanted. And you could say, well, the Jets took it, give the Jets credit. Okay, give the Jets credit, but we can't count on opponents refusing to guard the first 10 yards of the field on a weekly basis. That's just not going to happen. In the stages of the game before the Bucs took control, before the Bucs started playing the soft zones, Jets offense did nothing. How about the defensive side of the ball? I mean, I love Jonathan Vilma as a player. One of my favorite Jets players, a guy the Jets never should have traded. But if you listen to Jonathan Vilma during that game, you would have thought the Jets were playing a great defensive game. And particularly in the second half, it was not a performance the Jets needed. The Bucs get the ball to start the second half. Jets are down 2 scores. Jets need to stop Instead, they let the Bucs drive 16 plays, take 9 minutes off the clock, and kick a field goal to go up 3 scores. What happened the rest of the second half? Well, the Jets did force a 3 and out after that on the next Bucs series, but then 10-play scoring drive, 12-play drive that ended in the McDonald block field goal. But if McDonald doesn't make an amazing play, the Jets let the Bucs go 12 plays to get a game-clinching field goal at a point where a 3 and out gives you the ball with a chance to take the lead. That's not a good performance. And then you saw what happened in the last 147 of the game, where the Bucs took the ball, went 10 plays, got into chip shot field goal range. You saw a failure to execute. That was not a good defensive performance. I mean, 4 of the 5 drives in the second half, the Bucs had double-digit plays. 3 of them ended in points, and the 4th one did not end in points because Will McDonald made an unbelievable play on special teams. I'm not crediting the defense I know Will plays defense, but I'm not crediting Will McDonald's amazing play as a great defensive moment for the Jets. Jets defense was bad in this game. And this isn't the type of game where the Jets played mistake-free football. There were mistakes left and right in this game for the Jets. This isn't the type of game where you saw a formula that could work. See, week 1 against Pittsburgh, we saw a formula that could work for this team. We saw the Jets run the ball effectively. We saw Fields, in the moments the Jets called on him to throw, hitting passes. The Jets just played a really sloppy game. And the Jets, in many ways, were handed a golden opportunity to win it, and they kind of threw it away through their own sloppiness. And, in many ways, I think sometimes we forget about the early stages of the game. When it's a last-second loss, we don't put enough emphasis on early plays in the game. But the early plays in the game you don't execute hurt just as badly as the plays you don't execute in the fourth quarter. And the Jets fell behind because they were not playing sound football. It's not like the offensive line was playing well. If the Jets had a big day on the ground because the offensive line was dominating Tampa Bay, hey, you know what? That's something we could take moving forward. Jets offensive line had a bad day. You look, did anybody step up as a number 2 option in the receiving game behind Garrett Wilson? Absolutely not. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, how many missed tackles did we see? I mean, multiple times in the first half where Jets had a play stopped and somebody over pursues and a Bucs guy cuts the other way. He cuts across the field and rips off a big gain. All the penalties on defense, the completely undisciplined play. And, I don't want to be negative like this, but it's very easy to look at this game and come away feeling better about the Jets than you should. You can say, oh, the Jets fought back, but was the Jets comeback about the Jets executing at a high level? Was the Jets comeback about the Jets finding an identity on either side of the ball? No, I don't think it was. I think they were just kind of like a couple of random plays that went the Jets' way in this one. And yeah, I guess if you want to say they did come back and put themselves in a position to win, that's great. And if the defense had gotten the stop, I'm not going to lie, the tone of the show would be very different today, because I think sometimes over the course of a season, you need to catch a few breaks if you're going to exceed expectations. The Jets got their breaks yesterday, and they needed one defensive stop. And despite everything I just said, if they get that one defensive stop, it changes everything. But now you look at this season, they're 0-3. They have a game against Miami, which, seems winnable on paper, but they're going to have to play at a higher level going forward. I'm just I've been trying to find anything positive to latch onto through the offseason, through the first couple of weeks of the season. I've been desperate trying to find any reason for hope, because I just want the Jets to be decent. But I can't come away from this game where the Jets got thoroughly outplayed, where a bunch of things happened in the fourth quarter that actually let them have a chance to win despite being outplayed, and then they don't come through at the end. And you look at all the sloppy play. Look, you're playing a Tampa Bay team with an offensive line that has been completely reshuffled. A Tampa Bay offensive line that commits 5 holding penalties on the first drive, and the Jets still give up points. This is just not winning football. This is not close to being winning football. And one of the things about bad teams in this league, they find a way to lose, and they find new ways to lose every week. Yeah, one week you get blown out. One week you lose a coin toss game to Pittsburgh. And then you have a game where you mount a big comeback, and you still can't close it out. I don't think there are moral victories in the NFL. And I certainly don't think yesterday's game was a moral victory. And part of this, I think, is beyond Aaron Glenn's control. Ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, this game made it clear, as the first 2 games made clear, that there are just a lot of pieces on this roster who need to be replaced. Lots of big mistakes by guys who are probably not going to be here on the next good Jets team. We'll talk about who they are as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. Prize Picks is such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, easy, and a great way to follow along with football. You can have projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 270 passing yards, or Saquon Barkley for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. And this week's max discounts include Patrick Mahomes, 0.5 passing yards. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. And a big shout out to you everydayers. If you're new to the show, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. The Jets lost in Tampa Bay yesterday to the Buccaneers. The final score was 29-27. It was a last-second field goal, a game that looked like it was going to be a blowout heading into the fourth quarter. The Jets were down 20, and then Jets scored 3 touchdowns in a row. Unfortunately, the defense could not get a stop to close out the game. And you look at this Jets roster right now, and you just see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And Aaron Glenn has gotten his fair share of criticism over the last 3 weeks, and the criticism continued after yesterday's game. And I thought the criticism of Glenn yesterday took on a very odd form. So if you watch the game, Glenn had this big celebration when Will McDonald blocked the field goal and ran it back for a touchdown, and people are getting on him for that. Then Glenn's post-game press conference, he says, this is not the same old Jets. He talked about how the team showed fight, and people are getting on him over that, which I understand more. I did not have a problem with either of those things because, first of all, like on the McDonald field goal block, Glenn's excited. He's on the verge of winning his first game as a head coach, a lifetime of dreams potentially coming true. I think everybody would be excited. And I think the people criticizing Glenn over that are probably a lot of the same people that complain that Robert Saleh never showed passion on the sidelines. And on a side note, that was not the problem with Robert Saleh. There are 20 problems with Robert Saleh before him not showing passion on the sidelines. But if you complain about Saleh not showing passion on the sidelines, you can't get on Glenn for celebrating. Understandable reaction. The post-game press conference where, he said, we're not the same old Jets, where he was very complimentary of the team. I can understand why that would upset people, but I think you also have to understand who the target audience for that. The target audience for that's not the fan base. The target audience for that are the guys in the locker room. And you have to remember, this is a young team. This is a team that's had a lot of negativity swirling around it, particularly in the last week after a bad performance against Buffalo. These are impressionable young guys. I think he's just trying to find ways to keep them motivated. I think he's trying to find ways to, put some positive thoughts in their heads. I'm sure he's correcting a lot of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that's wrong. I'm not going to get on Glenn for being positive in his post-game press conference, because I think that there's a different audience than you or I for that post-game press conference. It's the players in the locker room who lost a tough game, and Glenn's trying to keep their spirits high. So I can't get on him for that. I also can't get on Glenn for some of the personnel the Jets have out there. I can get on him for some of the players, though. And there were players who failed to execute in this game. This past Jets offseason is starting to remind me a lot of Joe Douglas's first offseason in 2020. Douglas took over the team after the offseason in 2019. So the 2019 Jets were technically on his record, but it wasn't really the team he put together outside of he signed Ryan Khalil. But 2020 was Douglas's first offseason. And because the Jets had gone on a big spending spree under Mike McCagnon in 2019, Douglas really did not have much cap room. So he made a bunch of low-cost Band-Aid moves to try and improve the team, and none of them really worked. He brought in Brashad Perryman to play wide receiver. He brought in Pierre Desir to play corner. There were other moves around the team, and the only move that he made that offseason was the one big money contract he gave out, which was to Connor McGovern to play center. Well, this year, the Jets really gave out one big money contract outside of the quarterback, Justin Fields. It was to Brandon Stevens. And I don't know what else you can say about Brandon Stevens. Brandon Stevens just does not look like a guy who should be starting at corner in the NFL right now. It's just not working at all. He gave up a touchdown to Mike Evans. It almost felt like at points in the game, the Bucs were hunting Brandon Stevens. If Mike Evans ever got one-on-one against Brandon Stevens, if there was a play Sauce Gardner wasn't following Mike Evans, that's where they were going. And I thought it was a bad coaching job to leave Stevens one-on-one with Evans on the goal line. But Stevens over and over getting beaten on these plays, taking bad angles in pursuit, not showing any ability to cover. There's not a guy you want to be counting on. And I think the problem for the Jets is as they're trying to close this game out, there's so many guys on the field that you just know you can't count on. Andre Cisco, and I'm ready. It's only been 3 games. I'm ready to take the loss on Andre Cisco. Give me the L, because Cisco got toasted in coverage and on a key play on that last drive. It was kind of the play that set Tampa Bay up. It was just a brutal coverage play. I don't know what else to say. He got absolutely burned by Emeka Ibuka. Just dreadful. And he's been awful all season long. He's been taking bad pursuit angles. He hasn't shown any ability to cover. I saw a good film on him in Jacksonville. We haven't seen anything like that in New York. So, some of the early moves are just not panning out. And that was an early warning sign with Joe Douglas. It was not necessarily a 100% guarantee that Douglas was not going to pan out, but there were some early warning signs. And I think there have been some early warning signs with this new coach GM combo, because most of the moves they made this offseason have not panned out. But there are also guys they inherited. Michael Clemens, who, he got called for a face mask. Now, I'm going to go a little nuanced here. I don't think that was a good call, but I also think Clemens is to the point where he's got a reputation in this league. So a lot of times you see stars get calls in this league, or you see Kansas City get calls, and everybody thinks that there's a conspiracy. You hear about the Roger Goodell script writing. I don't think it's nefarious like that. I don't think that there's this super conspiracy that's helping certain players and certain teams. I think the officials are human. I think you have to remember that these officials are not full-time workers like you have in other sports. They all are doing this part-time. This is just their weekend job. The officials in the NFL, they're teachers, they're lawyers, they're real estate agents, they're insurance salesmen. They're doing this part-time, and they're probably big fans of the league. So I think sometimes they get a little starstruck around certain players. And last year, the Jets, it was literally years between Jets getting roughing the passer calls. How many roughing the passer calls did Aaron Rodgers get the benefit of the doubt on that we did not see Zach Wilson get, that we haven't seen Justin Fields get this year? A lot. Kansas City. I think that these guys get a little intimidated because they see these big names. And so I think they're inclined to give certain stars the benefit of the doubt. And I think that's true the other way. I think a guy like Clemens, who has a history of committing really bad penalties, if it's even close, he's going to get flagged. And that's a problem. But the bigger problem with Clemens is that he just doesn't produce. And there was a critical play on the series where McDonald blocked a field goal, where it was a bootleg, and Clemens got blocked one-on-one by a tight end. He lost contain because he couldn't get off a tight end's block. You're a defensive end in the NFL, and you can't get off a tight end's block. And, the Jets could not fix the defensive end position entirely this offseason, particularly the depth. Clemens is supposed to be the number 3 DE, but Jets have to upgrade the spot because you can't. It's tough to win games when you have a guy like Michael Clemens you're depending on in key snaps. And we also talked about the wide receiver position. I mean, Tyler Johnson with a big drop in this game. Tyler Johnson, emerging as the second option, I guess. That's not what you want. And Lazard got credited for the touchdown, but let's be honest, he dropped that. I mean, the Jets have nothing behind Garrett Wilson at the wide receiver position. And I think we're to the point of the year, and we're only 3 games in, but I think we're to the point of the year where you have to start looking at giving some of these young guys on the team reps. And I don't know that Arian Smith's going to produce a ton. I don't know that Tyler Barron's going to produce a ton. I don't know that Malachi Moore is going to produce a ton. But it's just time to give these younger guys, Azareye'h Thomas, who got into the game when Sauce Gardner got hurt. I don't know that he's going to produce a ton. But you're to the point where you got these young guys. The starters and the primary backups just are not producing. These are veteran guys, Clemens, Cisco, Stevens, Johnson. These guys just aren't going to produce anything for you. And at some point, you have to balance the now with the future. And even though these guys aren't high-level prospects, you have to start giving them more reps. And that doesn't, maybe these guys don't become full-time players, but it's worth it to give them snaps just to see if you can develop them at all. Give them game reps, and maybe they'll improve with them, because this team is so far away. And part of the reason they're so far away is that they are depending on guys on key downs who have no business playing key roles in this league. So put some of those younger guys in there and see if you can get more out of them. And during the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about another position the Jets need to get more out of, the quarterback position. And if we're talking about things that are repeatable, we know that Tyrod Taylor is not going to stay in the lineup, and his performance in this game cemented that. We'll talk about that as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Will McDonald's blocked field goal. It was for a fleeting moment, but the Jets took the lead late in the fourth quarter. Will McDonald, unbelievable play, highlight reel stuff, jumping over the blockers Tampa Bay had, blocking the kick, and then not just blocking it, picking the ball up and scoring. An incredible play, a play that would have lived on in Jets lore if the defense had been able to get a stop on the last series. Instead, it'll just be a nice memory we have for 2025. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season has arrived, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. Jets head to Miami for Week 4 action. They will be playing on Monday Night Football against the Dolphins. And despite the Dolphins looking completely lost through the first 3 weeks of the season, Miami is a 2.5-point home favorite against the Jets. Well, they say the home field counts for about a field goal, so maybe that means the odd makers think the Jets are a little bit of a better team than Miami, but the Dolphins are favored heading into Week 4 action Monday Night Football. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday. We're breaking down a New York Jets loss. They fall to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 29-27 yesterday at Raymond James Stadium. Now, I think most of the focus on this game, because of how crazy the fourth quarter was with the Jets scoring 3 touchdowns to erase a 20-point deficit, and then the Bucs driving down the field to kick a game-winning field goal as time expired, the majority of the discussion is going to be on what happened in the fourth quarter. But what happens in the first 3 quarters also matters a lot. The Jets were completely dominated in the first 3 quarters of the game. The defense did not play well. There were lots of culprits on the defense. On the offensive side of the ball, the Jets just did not get winning quarterback play in this game out of Tyrod Taylor. It was a really bad performance by Tyrod. And last week I really took Justin Fields to task for his poor performance against the Buffalo Bills. So it's only fair that I do it with Tyrod on this episode. Because I think heading into this game, there was a path for Tyrod to at least temporarily keep the starting job. You have to remember, we're 3 weeks into the season. You can say, well, the primary goal this year is to see what you have in Justin Fields. The primary goal is to try and develop Justin Fields. At this point of the year, the primary goal is to win games. If Tyrod had gone out there and played well and the Jets had won, we could have a discussion about whether you keep him in the lineup. And that doesn't necessarily mean Tyrod's starting the last 14 games of the season. It just, you keep him in the lineup until he plays his way out of it. I think that's pretty standard stuff with a backup quarterback, particularly when you don't have a starter who's entrenched. And Justin Fields is not entrenched. His last game against Buffalo was very poor. I'll say this for Tyrod. I think that for a young team, for a team that's just starting another rebuild, there's value to having a guy like Tyrod in the locker room because everybody likes him. Everybody says he's the consummate pro. Everybody, nobody has a bad word to say about Tyrod Taylor, what he brings to the locker room. But you saw in this game why he's a backup. And you saw in this game why, even though he's been in the NFL for over a decade, he's only been a primary starter for 3 years out of his career. In the early stages of this game, it was ugly for Tyrod. He was not getting through his reads quick enough. He was holding the ball for too long. I mean, I'm not saying the Jets offensive line played well. I thought that there were some big issues up front, particularly left tackle Olu Fashanu, who seemed to have a really rough game. But Tyrod wasn't even getting to his checkdowns quickly enough. I mean, there were times where if he gets the ball out to a running back, the Jets could at least produce a positive play. There were moments where he's scrambling and taking ill-advised hits. Two things we know about Tyrod Taylor. One, he doesn't usually turn the ball over. And 2, he usually doesn't produce a ton of big plays, despite a propensity to try and throw the ball down the field. Well, this game, he turned the ball over. And there was a brutal pick six right before halftime. And you can get on the Jets for trying to throw the ball in that situation. I think that that's a lot of complaining after the fact, though. I don't think anybody really had an issue with the Jets trying to attack the Bucs before the end of the first half until Tyrod threw that pick. And it was just a terrible pick. And again, I love Jonathan Vilma as a player, one of my favorite Jets, a guy who I wish the Jets had kept. But I did not understand his analysis for the life of me on that play. Because if you listen to Vilma, you would have thought Garrett Wilson was responsible for the interception for not coming back to the football. It was a horrific throw by Tyrod. It was a horrific decision by Tyrod. It was a horrific throw by Tyrod. It was a late throw across the field that had zero zip on it. You throw that ball 10 times, it's probably going to get picked off 7 or 8. That's just the ball that's begging to be intercepted. It's one thing to say Garrett probably could have done a better job working back to the football and maybe broken it up and caused an incompletion. But this was not, the way Vilma was talking about it, you would think, I'm going back 22 years here, you would have thought this was like Todd Pinkston quitting on a slant route for Donovan McNabb for the Eagles in the 2003 NFC Championship game. I mean, that was a game where like guys were messing up time routes. Guys just weren't completing timing routes. Guys were quitting on their routes early. Garrett Wilson probably should have fought back for the ball harder, but that interception is on Tyrod for making a horrendous decision. I think what speaks volumes is if you look to the stat sheet, and the stats are not always indicative of how a quarterback plays, but Tyrod hit some passes again when Tampa Bay went to that prevent in the fourth quarter. So as Tyrod was able to pad his stats a bit, he still threw for under 200 yards in 36 attempts. His average in this game was 5.47 yards per passing attempt. That's just not good enough. And again, like I think that we rightly will look to the fourth quarter of this game, particularly those drives where the defense did not come through. And even the drive where McDonald blocked a field goal, if the defense gets the ball back, forces an early punt, the Jets have a better chance of winning the game. But you also look through the first 3 quarters of this game, and there was mistake after mistake from Tyrod Taylor. There was error after error from Tyrod Taylor. These are the things that cost you the game. Tyrod Taylor did not look like a guy who's been in the NFL a long time. He looked like a struggling young guy. He looked like Justin Fields. He showed the inconsistency of Justin Fields. And the Jets offense in this game, I thought, had a really big problem staying on schedule. They were constantly behind the sticks. And I don't think Tanner Engstrand had a good game. Last week, Engstrand got a lot of grief. And I thought a lot of it was just based on Justin Fields playing poorly, because every offensive coordinator is going to look bad when your quarterback plays the way Justin Fields did last week. Every offensive coordinator is going to look bad the way Tyrod Taylor looked in this game. But I thought Engstrand made some bad calls in this game. There was a 4th down where everybody in the house knew the Jets were trying to run the ball up the middle. They weren't fooling anybody on that play. That play had little chance of working. I thought when the Jets went to the screen game, the Bucs clearly knew what was coming. They weren't fooling anybody. So I did not think it was a good game for Engstrand, but Tyrod just did not do enough to move the ball. And in some ways, like, I can say that that's a positive, because, we talk about what's repeatable. Well, we know Justin Fields is returning to the lineup as soon as he's cleared to play. And this game, I think, ended any doubt of that. If Tyrod went out there and lit it up and the Jets had won the game, it's a different story. Even if the Bucs missed that field goal at the end, I don't think Tyrod Taylor really showed you enough to believe that he should be the starter going forward. I mean, I don't come away from this game feeling very good about Tyrod. I don't come away feeling very good about the idea of Tyrod starting next week, because he just did not do enough in this game. I felt that there was very little positive outside of like those 2 drives where he was playing against the prevent defense, where essentially balls he was throwing that were not helping the Jets early because the Bucs weren't guarding the first 10 yards of the field suddenly turned into completions and the Jets started moving the ball. I mean, maybe he made a few plays. I mean, the touchdown to Lazard was a nice play where, he bought some time with his legs, but just a lot of bad decisions, not reading the defense effectively. And, I think that there was a school of thought within the Jets fan base and within some people in the Jets media that Tyrod could run the offense at a higher level. I think that has shown itself to not be the case. And any idea of Tyrod Taylor being a better quarterback than Justin Fields right now, I mean, maybe if Justin Fields keeps playing the way he did week 2 against Buffalo, we could revisit it. But there's really not much that suggests the Jets are going to win more games with Tyrod Taylor under center than Justin Fields. And I think if you're talking about reasons the Jets lost this game, Tyrod's going to fall under the radar. But for a guy who's a veteran quarterback, and this is part of the calculus, if the Jets have to throw Brady Cook in there, I'm not going to get on Brady Cook because Brady Cook's a rookie who's really not much of a prospect. But for a veteran who's supposed to be able to go out there, run the offense stably, keep it on schedule, hit the easy passes, Tyrod just did not do enough of that. And if I'm going to criticize Justin Fields when he fails last week against Buffalo, I have to be fair and criticize a guy who's been in the NFL much longer than Tyrod Taylor. That was not a winning performance. And it's one of those things that's going to fly under the radar because of how the game played out. But Jets got to get better quarterback play going forward. Unfortunately, I think they'll have a different quarterback going forward. But that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.